Welcome to vKind Connects. I'm your host, Shabnam Islam. And joining us today is Dr. Michael Klaper, longtime plant-based physician, vegan health educator, international conference and event speaker, author of numerous journal articles, and of course, 2 essential books that should be on your reading list. And that includes Pregnancy, Children, and the Vegan Diet, and Vegan Nutrition, Pure and Simple. Dr. Klaper, it is a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Lovely. Good to be with you, and thank you for the invitation.
Of course. So let's just jump into it. Your professional journey and journey into veganism coincides as a very unique story. Would you mind sharing how you arrived to the advocacy of plant-based medicine as your career purpose?
Oh, my. Well, we have to turn the clock back to 1981. I was always the kid in my family who wanted to make sure everybody's doing okay, that everybody's all right. I think that was a guiding force in me becoming a physician. So I've always had the inclination towards harmlessness. Injured animals always used to grieve me when on our uncle's dairy farm in Wisconsin. But in 1981, I had grown up eating the standard Western diet. I ate my burgers and hot dogs like everyone else. Didn't think much about it. That's what you're supposed to eat as a growing boy. But I had become a physician, and I was studying to be an anesthesiologist. I was doing an anesthesia residency at Vancouver General Hospital in Vancouver, BC. And I was on the cardiovascular anesthesia service, and day after day, I'm putting people to sleep, and I'm watching surgeons open up their chest and open up the arteries in their heart and pull out this yellow, greasy gup that was called atherosclerosis, and it was clogging their arteries, setting them up for heart attacks and strokes. And it was known by then, even in the early 80s, it's largely the fat of the animals these people are eating. And one day the surgeon pulled out a particularly slithery piece of material there, and I thought to myself, that looks like chicken fat. I remember my mother cleaning chickens on the kitchen sink. And the little voice on my shoulder said, "There's a good reason why it looks like chicken fat, doctor. It is chicken fat and cow fat and pig fat and the cholesterol that these folks are eating." And there are already studies in the medical literature showing that a plant-based diet will melt this plaque away from the inside of the arteries. And I had a really profound interest in this because my father died of clogged arteries. I watched him go through leg amputations before his heart arteries took him away. And so I know I've got those genes, and I know that if I didn't change my diet, it was going to be me on that table with that striker saw going up my sternum, and I sure didn't want that to happen. I saw those folks, and they woke up. They were very uncomfortable. But also at the same time, there was my growth as a human being, as a man, with a semi-spiritual component. I had done a lot of my training at big bad old Cook County Hospital in Chicago in the trauma unit. And I saw the worst of what human beings do to each other. And I had long made it a goal to, if I couldn't get the violence out of the world, at least get out of my own life. So I started reading books by Gandhi and the Indian saints about living a life of ahimsa, of nonviolence. So one evening, I'm out with another anesthesia resident, and I'm pontificating over dinner about living a life of nonviolence while I'm polishing off a porterhouse steak at the local keg and cleaver. And he looks at me with great compassion and says, "That's all very nice, Michael, but if you want to get the violence out of your life, you might want to start with that piece of meat on your plate. Because in satisfying your desire for the taste of flesh in your mouth, you are paying for the death of the animal and for the next one in line at the slaughterhouse." Well, as soon as he said that, all the old rationalizations jumped into my head. Well, that's what they raised them for, and the animal's dead already. But that same little voice on my shoulder said, he's right. He's right. And when I went up to pay for dinner, I felt complicit in a crime because on my uncle's dairy farm, I know the violence in putting any piece of meat on the table. I chopped the heads off chickens. I saw the old dairy cow shot in the head and butchered. And the meat is inherently violent. And here I was eating it. And from the message I was getting in the operating room about my own arteries and the message I was getting in my heart that night for the reality of the animals that I love, I knew that was the end of my meat eating, and I adopted a whole food plant-based diet. Well, my body loved it. Within 12 weeks, a 20-pound spare tire of fat melted off my belly. My high blood pressure went to normal. My high cholesterol went to normal. I felt great waking up in a nice lean body every day. And at that point, there was no going back, and I knew I didn't want to be an anesthesiologist and spend my time putting people to sleep. I'd rather go back to general practice and help them wake up. And so I did. And so that was 40 years ago, and I've been a plant-based physician ever since, and I'm the happiest doctor I know because my patients get healthy right before my eyes. It's such a deep pleasure to see these people transform their lives and their bodies just by transforming the food they're running through those cells. And so plant-based medicine is by far the most satisfying medicine I could practice, and that's where I am today.
It's beautiful. And now you talk about the physiological effects of eating meat or plant-based products, but how do you, as a medical practitioner, actually get people to see the impacts of what they're doing to themselves and actually get them to change their behavior?
Oh my, that's the question. $64,000 sounds small these days, but yes, that of course is the question. Now I've got a patient sitting in front of me, a whole constant parade of patients going through my office with the same physiognomy. They're overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, clogged up, inflamed. And so how do you reach these people? It's the food you're eating. So in my office, I have a presentation that I give my patients. I turn my laptop around and I bring up slides of what their blood looks like after you eat a fatty meal. After you eat a cheeseburger and a milkshake, your blood turns fatty, and you can see it. Draw blood in a test tube, you can see the fat floating on the tube. They really? And I said yes, and I show them the before and after pictures of people who've changed their diet. And so I get there, I can finally convince them, yeah, I guess this food thing, but I love my burgers, I love my cheese. And so you start working on that level. There's, of course, a strategy on how to meet people where they're at and find out what's your favorite foods already. Like spaghetti? Well, you can make spaghetti with pasta primavera, vegetables instead of meatballs. You can choose the bean chili instead of the beef chili. There's subtle but very ultimately important changes you can make in one's existing diet to go from meat-based to plant-based with very little, no real sacrifice, of course. The food is delicious. It's the sauces and the spices that are still there that make the taste satisfaction. But now there are more and more plant-based dietitians now who are also often vegan themselves. And wherever I am, I will often refer the patient to the dietitian, let her do the counseling, let her show them the website, show them the videos, take them shopping if needed, and then let me see you back in a month. And they're usually 5 pounds lighter. And oh, doc, I got it. Boy, you should have tasted the tofu lasagna my wife made last night. But if they're not a little bit leaner and healthier, then I've got to listen what's going on. And because the people, either the reluctance to adopt a plant-based diet or the reluctance to stay on it. Many people adopt a diet, but 5 years later, they're off the wagon there. And it turned out it's the social milieu around them. The family members aren't on board. Their friends, the people at the office. Are you still eating that rabbit food? And there's just so little support that becomes a major issue. It becomes an issue of sociology and fortifying their resolve. And I tell them, God forbid you get a heart attack or a stroke. It's only you in that hospital bed. It's not the people at work. It's not your sister-in-law. It's you. And every bite matters. Your body is never not looking. There's no fooling it. You can't tell your body, look over here and have a cheeseburger there. And what was that? Who are you kidding? And so you got to meet people where they're at. We Homo sapiens are complex creatures, and everyone's got their own attachments to various foods, but it's getting easier. You can get plant-based meals in almost every restaurant now. The supermarkets are filled with good, beautiful produce and plant-based options. And it's on the internet. It's on TV. And the kids, especially, a lot of the younger generation. They know because their connection with the animals and the connection with our climate crisis. It's all of a piece. And I tell them, there's three doors that people come to plant-based diets: either health, or they're concerned for animals. They don't want to pay for their suffering. Or the planet and our future. Our meat-based diet is driving global warming and so much of the environmental destruction we're facing. So I don't care which door they come through. As long as if you want to eat a plant-based diet, I'm your guy. You're going to benefit from it. And so you got to listen and listen and listen and listen and have compassion. I ate the same standard diet for 35, 34 years before I changed. I'm not going to wag my finger at anyone. I know what it's like to sleep that sleep where you're just not aware of what that burger really is, what that chicken breast really, the chickens are wonderful animals. They jump up in your lap. They like to be petted. They've got personalities. But they're just a piece of chicken, to most folks. And so whatever it takes to touch their hearts and reach their minds, I'm a complete pragmatist. If it works, it helps them make that transition, I will reinforce their efforts.
So your recommendation to any person, whether it be a health practitioner or a vegan, is to help people instill successful behavior change is to be patient, to give them options of replacements, to not make judgments, to know that people fall back and forth on that path of behavior change, right? From action, from maintenance, back to preparation. I don't know what I'm doing here. But really, what it sounds like is that having a solid team, a support structure, is what really maintains that behavior for a patient of yours or a friend in the community, correct?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And it's tough if, the people at home either aren't supportive or downright antagonistic. It's hard to fortify, but I help them to fortify themselves. This is really important because the truth is, it often, the person's resolve and the choices we make not only affect our own health, but very often that antagonistic constellation melts away after a while. Pretty soon, oh boy, that spaghetti sauce looks pretty good. May I try some of that? And the example we set radiates out. People look and they see what we're eating. And you can make up some dynamite spaghetti sauce, and I said, take yours out before you put the ground beef in there. Take yours out so you don't feel like you're, and you can still sit down at the same table and without violating your principles. There's ways to work it. It's a very dynamic process, but you really want to fortify the people in their resolve. And it also helps as the clinician, physician, to stay close to them if they know they got to face Dr. Klaper in a month. It motivates them to stay on
stay accountable.
Absolutely right. Accountability is important, but ultimately you got to be accountable to yourself, to your own body, to thine own self be true. Shakespeare said. Dr. Klaper says, "Thy own health be true, thy own arteries be true, thy own prostate gland, guys, thy own breast tissue, ladies, to be true." And because food affects all of them. Absolutely.
And so let's actually talk about the cost of investment for meat and dairy eaters. Often we talk about the cost pertaining to water footprint, carbon footprint, and of that nature. But what are the costs associated with the increasing levels of morbidity and mortality, like compared to plant-based individuals? How many coronary angioplasties have you done on a plant-based patient versus a meat-eating patient?
I've never. Well, I won't say never. I've got, that's a very important question. Of course, the vast majority of people, even with severely clogged arteries, if they really just start running a whole food plant-based diet, just lots of salads and soups and rice and greens and steamed veggies, and all these wonderful Asian curries, etc., through their arteries, the plaques melt away and arteries open up. It is disease-reversing diet. And so many of the high blood pressure comes down, type 2 diabetes resolves. I wish someone had told me this in medical school, that these are reversible diseases. I was taught once on insulin, always on insulin, they'll always be diabetic. Nonsense. I've got lots of people off insulin. I got lots of people off blood pressure medication. In fact, you have to get them off these pills or their blood pressure is going to drop too low. The blood sugar will drop too low. So by and large, the plant eaters are much, much healthier folks. We're all humans and we're all on this earth for a limited period of time, but you don't want to suffer. And these are self-inflicted diseases by and large. Now, that said, I've got 2 vegan patients who are really for the animals, etc. But both they're overweight. They can't keep their hands off the vegan donuts and the vegan cupcakes and the vegan pizzas. And they're overweight. One's got gout. The other one's got clogged arteries and you have a stent. And so just being vegan, no animal products, doesn't necessarily equate with healthy. And that's why we are now using the term whole food plant-based. I said, what does that mean? It means you want to eat food that you could identify growing in a garden. There's a tomato, beans over there, there's a cucumber there. Those are whole foods, okay? Eat that, and you're going to be fine. I don't care what you do with them, they'll fry them. But and the more raw foods you eat, the better. But the world's subsistent majority of people on planet Earth eat rice and vegetables and legumes, and they're leaner and healthier than most Americans on the standard Western diet. At least they used to be before the Western diet metastasized over there. Yes.
Now, do you ever share a scare story with your patients if they're ever in that, like, what type of long-term care is required after these surgeries, like a coronary angioplasty surgery, if you don't change your lifestyle behaviors?
Yes,
are they looking at another surgery down the road, or is that just mortality?
Very astute question, Doctor. Yes. Because I get a lot of, especially the guys in the office are sitting there. Their wife dragged me in, and he's sitting there with his hands on his ample abdomen there, and they say, "Listen, Doc, you got to die of something." So I'll get my heart attack and die. I don't want to get into all this. Get my heart attack and die, and I say, before you rest there, realize Mother Nature, she's got some tricks up her sleeve there. The worst thing in medicine is to have a stroke and not die and spend your next 30 years in a wheelchair drooling with some pretty nursey wiping your backside because you can't reach back there with one hand. That does wonderful things for marriage, does wonderful things for your own self-esteem. Or you get a heart attack and not die, but you lose 2/3 your heart muscle, and you get out of breath walking to the mailbox on the curb there. The world gets pretty small when you're tethered with oxygen tubes up your nose from your congestive heart failure. So before you play the get my heart attack and die, most people don't die. Lots of people do, no question. Every other person, I think, presenting symptom, presenting sign of a heart attack, almost 50% of people is sudden death, but the other 50% didn't die. But they're left with the damage that's done to their bodies, and it ages you, and you lose your ability to walk up hills because your legs are sort of clogged up, your leg arteries are so clogged up. The world really gets small. It turns you into an old, sick person, and and you bet I share that because I've seen so much of that, and sure, I'll be glad to share those stories with my patients.
So that kind of moves us into the next position. Tell us about moving medicine forward pod initiative, because this is designed to build more like-minded physicians like you, right? And impact the world. So tell us
absolutely,
about it.
Absolutely. One of the biggest we it's so important that we adopt a whole food, plant-based diet. I mean, we are plant-eating hominids. Let's start with that. We're just our anatomy and our physiology. We have fingers on our hands, not claws. We've got small mouths with flat, grinding molar teeth and a rotary jaw joint for chewing up roots and fruits and starches. Not big fangs for tearing flesh. And we've got basically the same digestive system that our bonobo and gorilla cousins have, and they're up in the trees eating leaves and fruit all day. We mean to honor, we're basically meant to run on whole plant foods. So with that, it's important that we honor that. Most of the diseases that we're getting, the clogged arteries, high blood pressure, diabetes, is because we transgress that natural law and we eat the meat of the mountain lion. We eat a diet of other animals that we shouldn't be eating, and we get obese and clogged up and diabetic, etc. And again, these are diseases of diet, diseases of choice. That said, it's important, again, for each of us individually to adopt a whole food plant-based diet and be lean and healthy. But again, for the planet, the ice caps are melting, the temperature's rising, largely because we're cutting down the forest to make cropland and grazing land for cattle and to grow corn and soybeans to shovel down the gullet of cows and pigs and chickens. And as we cut down the forest and burn them, that releases carbon dioxide into the air. We need to do the opposite as a species. We need to adopt a plant-based diet that we would need so much less land to feed ourselves, that there'd be land for the forest to come back, and as the trees grow, they take carbon dioxide out of the air and make it into solid wood, and so it reverses global warming on every level. The lights are flashing. Individuals adopt a plant-based diet if you want to be healthy. Homo sapiens as a species, you want to be healthy, adopt a plant-based diet. So it's clearly the move for each of us and all of us. But it's not happening. And why not? And we can go into the whole list. There's a whole juggernaut of powerful political, economic forces to keep the status quo going, and the pharmaceutical industry, the meat industry, the politicians, etc., and our habits, and the fast food industry, the advertising. We raise our kids on fast foods. It's hard to break these habits, and there's a lot of work to be done on that scene, and you and all the broadcasters and the communicators are playing such an important role, because it's about education at this point. We don't need another medical study showing that plant-based diets are healthy. We need to get this word out, which is why I'm so honored and happy to do this podcast. But that all said, why isn't it happening? Well, one big reason is my noble profession, the doctors. We don't know anything about nutrition. We never mention it to our patients. It's not respected as a science. It's a sissy science. Send them to the dietitian. I'm up in the operating room doing real medicine. But what are you doing up in the operating room, doctor? You're dealing with the infections and the infarctions and the amputations from what your patients are eating. These are all diet-related diseases. And what if all the doctors... I say when I'm in front of an audience, how many of you had a doctor ask, well, tell me about what you eat? Take me through yesterday's eating day. How many of your doctor asked you that? Of course, no hands go up. Well, that's got to change. Not only do doctors need to understand they're all dealing with these dietary diseases, but that a plant-based diet will reverse these diseases. And I have a slide in my slide presentation that I give to the doctors and the med students with a provocative question. Do you want to heal these patients or don't you? Really, if you're just going to see them every month to raise their dosage of metformin and beta blockers, not only are they going to get sick and die on you, but you'll leave medicine. They're all getting fatter and sicker. That's right, doctor. If you don't treat what the underlying cause, that's what you're going to see. And as I said earlier, why didn't somebody tell me this in medical school? If I was a first or second or third year med student, some attending physician or chief resident sat me down and said, listen, You're going to go out in an outpatient clinic. When you open the door to the waiting room in the ER or the outpatient clinic or surgery clinic, you're not going to see people with smallpox and leprosy like you're learning about in pathology. You're going to see people overweight, diabetic, high blood pressure, clogged up and inflamed. And it's from largely what they're eating. And a plant-based diet will reverse these diseases. You need to know that, and you need to be able to communicate this to your patients. You want to heal these patients, and you got to get this information across. So I realized that the acupuncture point that at least this physician can work at is reaching the medical students, to give them that lecture I wish someone had given me when I was a medical student. And so we established our Moving Medicine Forward initiative. And before COVID, it was me going around medical school after medical school. I've done in 2017, 2018, part of 2019, I went to 35 medical schools in North America, Australia, New Zealand. I went over in Europe, Lithuania, Poland.
Wow.
And the students are hungry, no pun intended, for this message. And so this is our Moving Medicine Forward initiative. Then comes along COVID, and I'm not on airplanes. I'm not lecturing hundreds of medical students in an auditorium anymore. So we went electronic, and so now several times a month, which will be increasing. I'm lecturing at Rutgers and Yale and UC San Diego and University of Washington and Seattle, and these are just some of the medical schools from the last 2 weeks where I lectured, and I give the lecture what I wish I learned in medical school about nutrition, because that's really where it's at, and again, the students are very enthusiastic about the message. We have a lot of Q&As, and there are some skeptics, and we're glad to address their concerns. But up until recently, it was a one-time drive-by lecture that I would get the enthusiasm up, and it would fade away. Well, we've now taken some steps to change that. We have now, through the donations of our wonderful supporters, and I invite your audience, I will tell you if you want to support our efforts. We've been able to hire a wonderful dietitian who Heather is going to, after I give a lecture, she's going to follow up with the medical student who invited me in. And because there's often a group, a lifestyle medicine interest group, or just a group of nutritionally interested students, and contact them. What do you need to keep the interest up? You need Dr. Klaper to Zoom in every other month for Q&A. You need to do plant-based journal clubs. You want to show films. You want to get guest speakers in. Whatever you need, Moving Medicine Forward will help you make that happen. And so we want to constantly keep the conversation going. Literally, we want them talking to each other, the students, but we want them to start asking the professors in diabetes clinic and high blood pressure clinic, what is this patient eating? Do you think a plant-based diet might be helpful here? And give them the support papers, the medical research that shows this. And you keep hacking away. This is a bottom-up movement here. And we keep getting this message in. After a while, we want to put ourselves out of business. We want a medical profession where, of course, doctors ask about that. Like they ask about oxygen saturations. Of course, they do that. Well, we want them to ask about patients' diet and know the power of plant-based diets to reverse disease. So it's so powerful. How can we withhold this from both the medical students and our patients? So Moving Medicine Forward is where I'm going to be putting the majority of my efforts until I can't get in front of a microphone any longer. And hopefully you'll have in the show notes, if people go to my website, drklaper.com, and click on Moving Medicine Forward, you'll see the website. And if people would like to make a tax-deductible donation, that would be most welcome, because we've got to pay Heather. But one way or the other, we'll find a way to keep this energy going. So thanks for asking about it.
And moving medicine forward isn't the only initiative that you're doing. It's not the only educational practice that you offer. You also offer this 12-unit masterclass in plant-based clinical nutrition, which I think is fascinating. You can either buy the 12 units at once, or you can buy them unit by unit and go at your own pace, which I think is brilliant. But I wanted to know, is this is this designed for health professionals only, or can anyone join?
Right. Anyone can join. I was talking to the medical audience, and there's some medical subjects discussed
Terminology.
there. Yes, right. And the biochemistry of gout and how too much fructose can actually raise your uric acid level. I show them the pathways of this. But yes, if people want to get any or all of our 12-unit masterclass, we do on diabetes, high blood pressure, etc. Again, go to drklaper.com and you'll see the tab to click for our masterclass. And it's very reasonably priced, and I just want to get the information out there. So thanks for asking about that.
Of course. So last and foremost, what do you see as your biggest accomplishment thus far in your 40 years of practicing medicine as a vegan?
Oh my. Boy, when I became vegan in 1981, I graduated in 1972. I'm coming up to my 50th year in medicine this June. But the first 10 were regular blood and guts emergency room medicine. I was still asleep back then. But as you say, it was 1981, 40 plus years ago. And back then, trying to eat plant-based was bleak. I mean, you could buy vegetables in the supermarket, but soy milk was a powder that you had to stir into water to make your own. Oh, it was, there were no product compared to today. It's gotten so much easier and more delicious. It's magic now, absolutely. My biggest accomplishment, it's the movement's accomplishment. I'm one small little fragment. I take no satisfaction in any of my personal accomplishments except the trail of nutritionally aware and awake medical students that I leave in my wake. And I never know who's really hearing what in the lectures, but I get these lovely messages from patients and not from patients, from young medical students, and to see more and more, I'm every week in my inbox now that I'm a plant-based cardiologist in Spokane. I'm a plant-based pathologist in Boston, and so I can see it percolating up into the fabric of our beloved medical profession, and I don't take credit for it, but I take great joy in that. And so, and when you tell people you're vegan now, and people. 40 years ago, what's a vegan? Or, that's, weird stuff. Now it's become pretty commonplace. Again, not due to my doing, but that's been such an advance. So, and the fact that, someone as bright and intellectual as you has asked me on to your podcast to discuss these issues is such a positive sign. So I just take great pleasure in the progress we're all making towards becoming not only more plant-based, but more compassionate. And we Homo sapiens, we're a pretty violent species, as we're all witnessing now. And not a lot of vegan consciousness in Ukraine right now. Though I know some wonderful Ukrainian vegan kids and folks, and my heart goes out to all of them. Tolstoy said, as long as there are slaughterhouses, there will be war. And that is so profound. And to help everyone become more peaceful in their dietary choices, more peaceful in their inner being, and more peaceful towards the world, it's all of a piece. It's all of a whole. And if I can help contribute to more peace in the world on any level, including less animals killed and less people dying prematurely and less environmental destruction, then on my last day on Earth, I'll go, yep, thank you for the chance to serve here.
Oh, that was just beautiful. I mean, sorry, I have to ask you another question here, but,
sure.
As a vegan who's been devout and moving through decades of this life, veganism has definitely had its resistance. Right? Even now, today, people are resistant to the fact of it. So what would you say to individuals that keep on getting no, to eventually get to maybe where you've gotten in your career, finding all the yes, all the success? How do you keep moving forward? What are your bits of gold?
Whoa, boy. Again, that gets to the heart of the question, the root of the question. Each person, it has to answer to their own consciousness, their own health. And every choice matters. Everything we do matters. And it becomes a matter of owning your own agency. And therefore, I don't care if people tell me I need to eat meat. I know I don't. And that we're going to put the ranchers out of business. No, we'll help them do something else with that land. You can grow fruit trees, grow broccoli, grow industrial hemp, let them become forests, let the forests come back. Do something else with the land. No one, all the no's that people have, it really just comes down to their taste preference. They like that taste of meat in their mouth. That's really, when you boil it down, that's really what they're defending. Because no one likes slaughtering animals. They wouldn't do it themselves. And no one likes environmental destruction. They're not aware that burger is, causes so much environmental damage. And so in their hearts, people want things to be good, and no one wants violence per se. Very few people do. It all comes down to that taste of meat in their mouth. And so one, you want to seduce them with just some dynamite vegan chili or some great vegan lasagna there. And lately we've seen the entrance of the Impossible Burgers and Beyond Beef and all of that. No one's saying those are ideally healthy foods. They are processed. There's concentrated protein, a little salt in there. Yes, true, yes. And you shouldn't be eating that stuff every day. But if they can help Joe Meat and Potatoes guy take a bite of that, I could eat that, and help him move away from the real beef burger as a transition food, they're heaven sent. I'm so grateful for them. And so if it comes down to that meat in their mouth, no, I don't want to lose that. We'll give them the plant-based meats. And if you can, it's like a set of training wheels when you're riding a bike. If you can help him get onto a healthier eating track, but it's the vegetables on the plate that are really going to make you healthy. It's not the phony meats there. So it comes down to this very primordial first, this sensual issue here, and so if you can ease them away from that, then you've made big progress here. So again, recognize the real nut of the issue there, that it really comes down to taste preferences and the comfort foods that mommy gave us, and dad always took us for hot dogs on Sunday. And it's those images, those memories and preferences that we've got to ease them into a better, more positive, more healthful paradigm. And you do it one person at a time, you do one family at a time, but now it's happening one medical school class at a time. And if the doctors start promoting it, that's going to be a quantum leap. The dam will start breaking then at that point. So that's the theater I'm working in. So everybody can do what they do. You work with where you're at. Theater Roosevelt said, do what you can with what you've got where you're at. And so you've got your gifts, I've got mine. We're all working to make a better, more peaceful, more healthy world. And so you do what you can with what you got where you are.
And yes, and if you lead with love, patience, and education and stay committed to your values, I think it transcends communities, it transcends language, and it can really impact the world. So
Absolutely.
Here at vKind, we would love to thank you for sharing your time, your insight, and your vision for the future with us. And that wraps up this edition of vKind Connects with the magnificent Dr. Michael Klaper. And to learn more about Dr. Michael Klaper, his initiatives, and his upcoming events, please go to his website at drklaper.com. That's DOCTORKLAPER.com. And to watch this episode and many more, subscribe to our vKind Vibes YouTube channel. And to stay connected with us and the vegan community, follow us on Instagram and download the vKind app today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
In a world where cruelty is the main entree, vKind Studios is serving up a new kind of culinary challenge. In each episode of Peeled, contestants face off to be named hottest vegan chef or get peeled into the compost. Tune in summer of 2022 as we cook up compassion. This season, color is in, and cruelty is out. No plants felt pain in the making of this video.